I never expected the call to come through my encrypted line. Not this late. Not from her. Pam. I answered cautiously, already sensing the storm in her voice. We have a problem, she said, flat and cold. And his name is Clarence Thomas. I paused. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas wasn't exactly someone you just name-drop like that. But Pam Bondi, Florida's former Attorney General and a relentless political bulldog, didn't play games. If she was calling me, it meant something bad was already in motion. Start talking, I said. Pam took a breath. I've got documents. Real ones. Leaked from a private meeting last week at the Federalist Society. Clarence was there. So were 3 billionaires, all with direct ties to military contractors. And guess what? They're laundering settlement funds, federal ones. My mind reeled. 3 billion, in settlement money? 3 billion. And it was supposed to be earmarked for veterans. Instead, they funneled it through shell charities. And Clarence? He greenlit the entire operation behind closed doors. I rubbed my face. How the hell does a sitting justice get away with that? He's not just sitting. He's running the show. Pam's voice dropped into a whisper. And if I don't go public soon, they'll bury the whole thing. Literally. I heard paper rustling on her end. I'm emailing you the files. Cross-check them with the last DOJ settlement in July. Look for Athena Group and Liberty Endeavors. Those aren't real charities. They're the cover. The line went dead before I could ask more. Typical Bondi move. I sat in silence for a moment, then opened the encrypted inbox. Sure enough, there it was, subject, the plan. Password, 3B truth. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Once I opened this, there'd be no going back. No sleep. No safety. And definitely no forgiveness from the ones pulling the strings in Washington. But I had to know what Clarence Thomas was hiding. I typed in the password. The files were massive, over 600 pages of legal memos, bank records, email threads, and, buried deep inside, a transcript marked, Private, SCJT, Conf. It was a transcription of a closed-door session. Date stamped. Audio converted to text. Clarence Thomas was clearly leading the conversation. Thomas, we don't need their permission, just their silence. The funds go through Liberty, then to Athena. They won't trace it unless someone opens the wrong file at DOJ. And they won't. Another voice, unnamed, and the media. Thomas, handled. Bondi's our only concern. She's noisy. She has friends. If she pushes, we isolate. I leaned back. My throat felt dry. This wasn't just a misuse of funds, it was a full-blown shadow operation. A Supreme Court justice coordinating the laundering of federal settlement money, and casually discussing how to eliminate political threats. My phone buzzed. Pam again. No greeting. Do you see now? She asked. Yeah, I said. It's worse than I thought. But how the hell did you get the transcript? There was a pause. I had someone on the inside, she said. A court clerk. He's missing now. Missing? Vanished 2 days ago. No calls. No car. No digital footprint. Gone. I felt a chill run through my spine. What do they want with 3 billion? I asked. They already have it, she said. They've been moving it offshore, prepping for something bigger. A series of Patriot Foundations, all fake. The money's being used to buy influence, silence whistleblowers, and install judges in key circuit courts. She paused. This isn't just about Clarence anymore. This is a judicial coup. My head spun. And you're planning to go public with all of it? I was. But there's a problem. Let me guess, someone's trying to stop you. Her voice trembled slightly. First time I'd heard fear in Pam Bondi's tone. I got a note yesterday. No return address. Just a photo of my front door. And the words, "You have until Monday." I checked the date. It was Sunday. Tomorrow. All right, I said. Then we leak this tonight. Already working on it, she replied. But I need one thing from you. Name it. She lowered her voice. Find the missing clerk. If he's alive, he's our insurance policy. The line went dead again. And just like that, I was hunting a man who knew too much, and who Clarence Thomas might already have buried. The clerk's name was Daniel Miles, and according to court records, he'd worked quietly in Justice Thomas's chamber for over 5 years. 0 complaints, no headlines, spotless internal reviews. That kind of profile meant one of two things: either he was invisible by choice, or someone had scrubbed his trail clean. I started with the last traceable ping from his phone, geolocation metadata tied to a parking garage 3 blocks from the Capitol. From there, he vanished. But then I got lucky. A Metro worker on Reddit had posted about a weird guy who abandoned a government ID at L'Enfant Plaza 2 nights ago. I matched the name, D. Miles, Judiciary Branch Access. Within an hour, I was walking that station, retracing his last steps. The station cameras had been offline for maintenance, standard red flag. But I found something else, a blind spot behind a closed vendor stall. Inside, wedged between cardboard boxes and expired snack bags, was a bloodied cufflink. Monogrammed. CT, I sent a photo of it to Pam. She called instantly. That's real, she confirmed. Clarence gave those out to his inner circle. Custom order. Only 5 sets were ever made. Then someone lost their cool, I said. Or Daniel fought back. A moment passed. Pam whispered, "You're in danger now. They know you're involved." Yeah. I figured that out when I saw the van tailing me from the station. I ducked into an alley behind a bookstore, phone pressed to my ear, boots echoing on damp concrete. They'll go after your hard drives. Shut down your access. You have hours, maybe less, she said. I'm headed to a safe house in Alexandria. Meet me there, midnight. Copy. But one more thing. I looked back to make sure I wasn't being followed. Do you think Thomas ordered the hit? Pam was silent. Then, not directly. That's not his style. But his fingerprints are all over the machine that did. The call ended. Just as I stepped out of the alley, a man in a dark coat blocked my path. You need to come with us, he said, flashing a badge that wasn't DOJ, wasn't FBI, wasn't anything. I glanced over his shoulder. Black SUV idling. 2 more men inside. Unmarked. They knew. I ran. I don't remember every turn I took through DC's backstreets, but I ran like I had the weight of $3 billion and a Supreme Court scandal strapped to my back, because I basically did. By the time I made it to the Alexandria safe house, I was soaked in sweat, nerves shot, and still clutching the USB drive I'd ripped from my laptop before my place blacked out. Total power kill. Someone had tripped the breaker remotely, and that wasn't something amateurs could do. Pam opened the door before I could knock. You look like hell, she said. Good. That means you made it. The safe house was nothing flashy, just a forgotten brick townhouse owned under an alias tied to a dead pack. She locked 3 bolts behind us and ushered me into the back room. Her laptop was open. She was already live on a private server, uploading fragments of the leak to 5 journalists she trusted, or used to trust. This is bad, she muttered, scrolling through new intel. Athena Group is filing for sudden dissolution. Liberty Endeavors already wired out $900 million, Cayman Islands. We're watching the money vanish in real time. I handed her the USB. This has the court memos, the transcript, and the cufflink, photo and metadata. Pam inserted it. Her eyes scanned the files, then she froze. This is new. She turned the screen to me. Subject, Miles Protocol, timestamp, 2 hours before Daniel vanished. Sender, an anonymous Proton mail. Message, if anything happens to me, go public. Clarence has a second plan. Bigger than the money. Check the nominee files, Circuit Court DC. They're planting someone worse. Bondi knows who. She stared at the screen. Silent. Who, Pam? I asked. Who are they planting? She hesitated. Then whispered a name like it physically hurt to say it, Herschel Van. I blinked. That's the guy who defended the Georgia data purge case. The same guy who argued whistleblowers should be charged under treason statutes. She nodded. He's being fast-tracked. No hearing, no press. Midnight vote scheduled for Tuesday. That's what Clarence was protecting. The money is fuel, but this is the fire. Outside, a car rolled to a stop. Pam looked at me. We're out of time. We grabbed everything. She tucked the drive into a hollowed-out book and pulled out a go bag from under the floorboards. We go dark. Tonight. But just as she opened the door to leave, crack. A bullet shattered the front window. Pam screamed. I hit the floor. She ducked behind the couch, glass flying across the room. Red dot on the wall. A second shot hit the bookshelf behind her head. They weren't coming to intimidate us anymore. They were coming to erase us. Back door. Pam shouted, ducking behind the toppled couch. I could barely hear her over the ringing in my ears from the shots. I lunged toward the kitchen, grabbing her go-bag on the way. The back door was reinforced, steel core, deadbolt. Whoever set up this safe house had been expecting worse. I threw it open and we slipped into the alley behind the building just as the front door caved in with a crash. 3 men stormed in. Silencers. Tactical gear. No insignia. Government. Private contractor. At this point, the lines were too blurred to tell. Pam and I moved fast through the alley. She tossed me a burner phone from the bag. Go north. Meet at the designated zone. Don't stop for anything. What about you? I asked. She pulled a pistol from her waistband, cocked it. I'll slow them down. Are you insane? No. I'm done being afraid of these people. She vanished into the shadows before I could argue. I took off. 40 minutes later, I reached the extraction point, an abandoned gas station off Route 1, pitch black, the only sound a flickering fluorescent light inside the garage. I waited. 15 minutes. Then 20. No sign of Pam. Just as I pulled out the burner to call the backup number, it vibrated in my hand. Unknown number. I answered. Static. Then a male voice, we have her. I froze. If you want her alive, bring everything to Justice Hall, D.C. Courthouse. Alone. 5 a.m. And no press. Click. My pulse surged. Justice Hall. That was Clarence Thomas's turf. A courthouse where cameras were banned, where walls had ears, and where leaks went to die. I checked the book. The USB was still hidden in the hollowed pages. But I knew what this was now. They weren't just after silence. They were trying to trade a life, for the truth. I stared down at the drive. $3 billion. A missing clerk. A midnight vote. A corrupted justice with more power than anyone should have. And now, Pam Bondi, kidnapped. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about taking the whole damn system down, or being buried under it. 4:57 a.m. The steps of Justice Hall loomed like a mausoleum for truth. No sunrise yet, just cold wind and concrete silence. I approached the main entrance alone, holding the book tight under my arm. My phone was off. No trackers. No press. Just me and the ugliest truth in America, wrapped in a hollowed-out copy of Federalist No. 78. 2 men in plain suits waited by the doors. One nodded. Inside. I followed them through the echoing marble corridors, past security checkpoints that had been turned off, metal detectors blinking dead. We reached a courtroom, room 204. One of the old ones. No cameras. No microphones. Pam was there. Tied to a chair. Duct tape across her mouth. Bruised, but alive. And across from her, seated calmly at the judge's bench, sipping tea from a monogrammed cup. Justice Clarence Thomas. He looked up at me like I was a student interrupting his lecture. You made good time. I stared at him, trying to suppress the instinct to lunge across the room. You've gone through a lot of trouble to protect $3 billion dirty dollars and a rogue nominee, I said. Thomas gave a slow smile. The money was never the point. It was just a filter, something loud enough to distract people like you. He stood and walked down from the bench. While everyone chased ghosts in offshore accounts, we installed 52 lower court judges. The real operation was ideological. Permanent. Constitutional. I held up the book. This has everything. The transcript. The clerk's files. If this leaks, Thomas interrupted me. It won't. Because you're going to hand it over, and walk out of here alive. Or refuse, and she dies in front of you. He nodded toward Pam. One of the men lifted his coat, revealing a silenced pistol tucked at the hip. I looked at her. She gave me a hard stare, eyes wide. She shook her head, don't do it. But something had shifted in me. I wasn't scared anymore. I slowly opened the book. Pulled out the USB. Then I smiled. You think this is the only copy? Thomas blinked. I dropped the USB onto the marble floor. Crack. Then I pulled a second drive from my jacket pocket. This is the real one. His face twitched. I threw it out the open window behind me. Right into the hands of Rachel Lynn, a reporter Pam trusted, standing below in the courthouse courtyard with a long lens and a live stream feed already rolling. Thomas lunged. Gunfire. One of the guards fired, but I ducked behind the bench. Pam tipped her chair, crashed hard to the side, breaking the wood. She writhed free. Chaos. But it was too late. Rachel was already reading the first line of the transcript into the mic. Clarence Thomas, we don't need their permission, just their silence. It was over. Thomas knew it. He stood frozen as sirens began blaring in the distance. Real sirens. DOJ. OIG. FBI. All of them, pouring in like the gates of justice had finally blown open. I looked at Pam. She was already on her feet. She grinned, blood on her lip. We just bought back the country. By 9 a.m., Justice Hall was surrounded. FBI. Internal Affairs. A dozen unmarked Suburbans clogging the street like a funeral parade for a fallen empire. Clarence Thomas didn't resist. He didn't have to. He simply walked back to his bench, sat down, and waited, stone-faced, as agents read him his rights. Not a word. Not a flinch. The footage went viral before he even left the building. By noon, the headlines were everywhere. Justice Thomas implicated in $3 billion scandal, bombshell leak sparks national investigation, Pam Bondi survives assassination attempt, breaks open deep state judicial coup, secret court nominee Herschel Van withdraws AS Senate demands emergency hearings, the USB drive had enough to trigger 5 subpoenas, freeze over $2.2 billion in assets, and name more than 28 political figures as complicit in laundering, manipulation, and procedural fraud. And it wasn't just the money. It was the network, hidden judges, sealed backdoor confirmations, legal foundations designed to outlive any presidency. A slow-motion judicial heist, and we stopped it just hours before they could lock it in place forever. 3 weeks later Pam Bondi stood before the Senate Committee on Government Oversight, calm, unapologetic, and, shockingly, cheered by both sides of the aisle. "I never wanted to take down a justice," she told them. But he was no longer serving the Constitution. He was serving power. And I don't serve power. I serve truth. Outside, crowds chanted her name. Protesters held signs showing Clarence Thomas's face with the words, "Silence isn't justice." The clerk, Daniel Miles, was found alive in a farmhouse near the Blue Ridge Mountains, drugged, shaken, but recovering. His testimony corroborated every line of the leaked transcript. Clarence Thomas resigned under sealed negotiations. Some say it was to protect his wife. Others say it was to shield the court from deeper exposure. He disappeared from public life. No interviews. No memoir. Just gone. As for me, I still have the original drive. The real one. It holds more than what we released. Names. Footnotes. Whisper trails. The stuff too dangerous to surface, yet. Pam calls it, the Arkansas. And someday, if the system falls back into shadow, we'll open it again. But for now, we won. Not just the battle. Not just the headlines. But the soul of the law. 4 months later location, undisclosed cabin, Northern Virginia. The snow fell thick and slow outside. The kind of quiet that warns you something's coming. I hadn't seen Pam Bondi in months. Not since Clarence Thomas resigned and the hearings faded from primetime news. She'd gone underground again, back to what she called deep quiet. But this time, she didn't resurface for Fox, or MSNBC, or any committee. She reached out with one message: we need to open the Arkansas. Now. I knew what that meant. We'd kept it hidden, 2 terabytes of raw, unfiltered corruption. Some of it so radioactive we hadn't even told the FBI. The data wasn't just about Thomas. He was a door. Behind him was a hall of shadows. Pam greeted me at the door of the cabin. She looked older. Not in years, but in weight, like she'd been carrying something heavy. Something new came in, she said without small talk. A data burst from Miles. He was sitting on it. Said he'd only release it if he felt another operation forming. And? I asked. She handed me a hard drive. He felt it. Inside the cabin, we loaded the files. And what I saw chilled me more than the $3 billion ever did. A series of sealed memos, encrypted logs, and internal Federalist Society appointment lists. The top of the folder read, Project Paladin, Judicial Continuity Strategy, beneath it, a timeline. A roadmap. A domino plan to install 12 unburnable judges, people immune to public scandal, built from the ground up, with no digital footprint and total ideological obedience. The first had already been confirmed quietly last week. And the last? A candidate to replace Chief Justice John Roberts. By 2026. I stared at the screen. This was never about Clarence, I whispered. Pam nodded. He was just phase 1. We sat in silence as realization sank in. They'd let Thomas fall. Because the real plan, the deeper, colder one, was still alive. And it was moving. We spent all night digging through the new Paladin files, cross-referencing names, dates, and obscure confirmation schedules. Pam moved like she was assembling a nuclear device, precise, quiet, deadly. These aren't just judges, she finally said, staring at the monitor. They're assets. I leaned over her shoulder. Each nominee had a codename, a dossier, and something much darker, a trigger file. Blackmail. Hidden leverage. Things to ensure silence, compliance, and longevity. It was the new judicial doctrine: control the black robes, and you control the Constitution. Codename, Mirage Position, Appellate Nominee, Ninth Circuit Asset Note, under CIA Observation, Compromise 2014, Tel Aviv Operation. Contingency, release of hotel footage ensures loyalty. My stomach turned. Jesus, I muttered. They're installing judges with compromise protocols. Pam didn't even blink. They've already installed 3. We missed them. But we won't miss the 4th. She pulled up a new profile. Codename, White Silence Name, Laura Kincaid. Public face, anti-corruption law professor at NYU, known for progressive stances. Quiet, clean, unassuming. Private intel, connected to covert domestic surveillance project under DARPA, 2012. Helped draft legal immunity clauses for government contractors during the Snowden era. Her hearing? 2 weeks. Fast-tracked. 0 press. She's going to be the cover, Pam said. The perfect face. Clean record. Public darling. But underneath? She'll vote every single case in line with Paladin directives. Which court? I asked. Pam's voice went cold. Supreme Court. That night, we reached out to the only person who could help us stall the nomination, Senator Jared Langston, independent from Montana, unbought, unpredictable, and just paranoid enough to listen. We met him in a diner off Route 50, 2 exits past the last traffic light. Langston leaned in, eyes scanning the file on our burner tablet. If this is real, they'll burn me alive just for looking at it. Pam nodded. That's why we need you to blow the hearing open. Force a delay. Demand a full ethics review. Langston smirked. You want me to get eaten alive on national TV? No, I said. We want you to pull the fire alarm before the house burns down. He looked up. Then slowly nodded. You've got 1 shot. You better have proof by Tuesday. He stood, dropped a $20 on the table, and walked out. Pam exhaled. If we miss this one, she said, Paladin gets a seat for life. Tuesday, 9:03 a.m. The Senate Judiciary Committee chamber was packed. C-SPAN cameras rolled. Journalists lined the back row like vultures in ties. But most eyes were on the woman seated front and center, Laura Kincaid. Dark blue suit. Poised. Harvard diction. The image of idealism wrapped in polished steel. And the country was eating it up. Professor Kincaid has a record of fairness, independence, and legal clarity, the chair droned. We look forward to learning more about her. Pam and I sat in a gallery under fake names. Phones off. Faces neutral. Senator Jared Langston adjusted his glasses. He looked calm. Too calm. Then he leaned into his mic and detonated the room. Madam Chair, I have an urgent motion. Before questioning proceeds, I'm submitting evidence that this nominee, Ms. Kincaid, is currently under investigation for prior classified legal work tied to domestic surveillance contracts, and is named in a series of judicial manipulation documents codenamed Project Paladin. Gasps. One senator actually laughed, nervous, like a man trying to swat a hornet away with a spoon. The chair blinked. Excuse me, Senator. Langston dropped a thick manila envelope on the desk in front of him. This contains sealed files decrypted by a federal whistleblower who disappeared in November. He worked for Justice Thomas's office. Kincaid's smile flickered. The crowd stirred. Phones began vibrating across laps. Alerts were hitting the networks already. Hashtags firing like shots across social media. Pam nudged me. "Watch her hands," she whispered. Kincaid's fingers twitched, just slightly. She was cracking. 9:17 a.m., Senator Langston, Kincaid said, calm but sharp, "Are you accusing me of participating in a judicial conspiracy based on information from an anonymous, missing clerk?" Langston smiled. "I'm not accusing you. I'm exposing you." Then he reached into his folder and pulled out a USB. "Same design as the one from Justice Hall. I'm entering into the record Exhibit B, audio of a private strategy session at the 2022 Federalist Society retreat, where Ms. Kincaid's name is cited, by Justice Clarence Thomas himself, as a quote, trusted long-term asset." Kincaid stood. "Madam Chair, I won't dignify this circus, sit down," the chair snapped. The room flipped. Senators were shouting. One aide sprinted toward the chamber doors with a phone. Reporters started tweeting faster than their hands could type. And then came the voice. Broadcast through Langston's mic, from the USB, "Clarence Thomas, Lara is clean. That's why she works. No digital footprint. DARPA buried the Tel Aviv work. She'll hold the seat longer than I will." Dead silence. Kincaid didn't move. Then, finally, she picked up her water glass. And threw it. Glass shattered. She bolted from the witness table. Capitol Police were on her in seconds. Pam sat back, whispered, "There goes Paladin's perfect face." Later that day Langston called us from a secure line. "Nominations dead. DOJ opened a full probe. Senate oversight wants to see everything." Pam lit a cigarette she hadn't touched in years. "They're gonna dig up the whole graveyard now." "No," I said quietly. "They're gonna find out the graveyard was built on top of a bunker." We all knew what was coming next. Paladin had more code names. And not all of them wore robes. 3 days after Lara Kincaid's arrest, Paladin's structure began collapsing like a sandcastle under a rising tide. DOJ task forces raided Liberty Endeavor's offices in 4 states. 2 federal judges quietly resigned. 3 more went silent. And someone, somewhere, tried to erase everything: servers fried, assets vanished, even hard drives physically smashed in circuit court basements. But it was too late. The Ark had already been distributed. Pam made sure of it. The bunker wasn't a metaphor. Buried deep beneath a long-forgotten Cold War emergency facility just outside D.C., Pam had found the final link. A literal, off-books command center beneath a fake data storage company, used in the early 2000s by government contractors. Turns out it had never been decommissioned. And the logs? Still intact. When we descended into the sublevel, even the security systems were dated, keypads from the Bush era, thick steel doors humming with forgotten paranoia. Inside, row after row of physical filing cabinets, paper files, too risky to digitize. Pam opened one marked Black Robe Continuity Initiative, 2001 to 2023. I read the first line. Paladin is not a project. It is a doctrine. Judicial sovereignty must be untouchable. Constitutional flexibility must be programmable. Control the bench, and you control history. There were code names, familiar and new. Politicians. Judges. Think tank executives. Media liaisons. Even former White House legal staff. One in particular stopped Pam cold. She pointed to a file labeled Sovereign Red, High Risk Exposure, inside, her own name. Dated the week before she went public about Thomas. "I was on their kill list," she said quietly. "Not because I leaked it. Because they expected me to." She looked up at me. This was bigger than money. Bigger than Clarence. They were building a permanent legal government, one that couldn't be voted out, impeached, or exposed. I nodded. We just unplugged their operating system. Weeks later Congress passed the Judicial Transparency and Ethics Act. For the first time in U.S. history, sitting federal judges would face real-time disclosure requirements and independent oversight boards. Clarence Thomas stayed silent, tucked away in private exile. No memoir. No apology. Laura Kincaid flipped, cooperated in full. Senator Jared Langston became the most hated man in Washington, and the most trusted. As for Pam Bondi, she declined every interview. Refused a book deal. Turned down 3 TV contracts. She disappeared again. Some say she's living under a new name in Colorado. Others say she's still out there, watching, waiting, protecting the Arkansas me. I wrote this because someday, maybe years from now, the machine will try to reboot. It always does. And when it does, you'll know what to look for. Names buried in filings. Votes cast in silence. Judges with 2 clean records. Because now you know. Now you've seen what power really looks like. And what it costs to stop it.